Well, I am so excited. We have a trailblazer with us, and like just cuz. Jayne Krentz, welcome back to Fated Mates. You are now a 2-timer. We're so
Thank you
excited.
so much. I don't know what it says about a career path when you've been a trailblazer twice, and I think I've got a total of 3 or 4 lifetime achievement awards.
There you go.
That's what really makes me nervous.
Yeah, I was going to say.
How many lifetimes have I got left?
Simultaneously very flattering and also terrifying.
That's amazing. I never thought about it that way before.
This is not a Lifetime Achievement Award episode. This is not even a Trailblazer episode. This is just us with our friend Jayne talking about romance novels.
The best thing.
But Happy New Year. It's early January. You have a new book out. And we're very excited to have you. Welcome, everyone, to Fated Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels, and I write them.
And I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and editor. And Jayne, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself however you would do that? Because, I mean, what do you say?
Trailblazer, Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
4-time Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
I'm Jayne Krentz, and I made the rather semi-catastrophic mistake of using 2 or 3 pen names since the beginning of my career. And my public service announcement to all writers out there or wannabe writers out there is, whatever you do not use pen names. Stick with one. That's it. That's the best advice I can give you today.
Except the Amanda Quick fans in the audience are objecting vocally.
They clutch their pearls.
There's a logical reason for this. The problem with pen names is that in this modern era, you can't build 2, 3, 4 brands.
Yeah.
And you're stuck with building your own brand because that's the business.
Wait, so what are you doing with social media?
Very little.
Showing up on Fated Mates, Sarah.
You're Jayne Krentz on social media.
Yeah. I try to consolidate everything under Jayne Krentz because what am I going to do? Run 2 websites, 3 websites? It's just, I don't have time for that. Nobody has time for that. So everything is under Jayne Krentz on Instagram or Facebook or.
Your Amanda Quick books do not say Jayne Krentz on them, on the cover, right?
Back at the start, I had killed off the Jayne Krentz career at another publisher.
R.I.P.
This is why it's a Lifetime Achievement Award, Jayne. You literally rose from the dead.
Yeah, resurrection is a.
And name 4 Jayne and Lazarus.
I can't name
up.
that many.
There is that thing about being able to reinvent yourself. That's a pretty crucial, as we all know, element in the business, to surviving the business. But the Jayne Castle books do have Jayne Krentz writing as Jayne Castle.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find that you still have readers who discover you in one name and then are surprised that you are, even now?
Yeah. All the time.
4 Lifetime Achievement Awards in.
If I go to a signing, I can absolutely guarantee you there'll be a whole bunch of people in the line who did not know I wrote as Jayne Krentz or Amanda Quick or Jayne Castle.
Well, and that's when you're really like, this is the real problem, right? People be like, I would read 7 of your books a year. I had no idea.
Exactly.
Jayne, you probably know about this, but there was back in the day, I mean, I'm sure you know about this. It predated me, I think, as a reader, but there was a book that they would publish, and it was like all of the pseudonyms of all of the pen names of all of the authors. So you would, open to the Jayne Krentz page, and it would say Jayne Castle, Amanda Quick. It would, say Erin St. Clair under the
right,
Sandra
Rachel
Brown.
Ryan, Sandra Brown, right. Well, and everybody, if you're new, the reason why is because you had to have a different name at different houses. Essentially, it was almost like they're like, we own this name, so you can't be this name somewhere else. And so if you were writing across categories, right, you're writing for Harlequin and Silhouette and Pocket, you had to have different names.
Yeah, that was the way it was in the old days. I don't think that applies anymore, but yeah. Although people still... I still see writers taking pen names if they're going to try something really different.
Totally new.
Yeah, and there is some logic to that. The problem is getting attention for that new name. It's just so hard.
So difficult. I mean, it's interesting because I think a lot of the publishers, traditional publishers especially, feel like, well, if you're shifting genre, right? Like if you're moving, for example, so Diana Quincy, for example, this year, and Lenora Bell, both historical romance writers, are both writing thrillers this year. And they are straight down the middle thrillers. And Lenora, for her work, it has literally created like a character who will then be the sort of detective through all of her future books, hopefully. And both of those publishers, I think, were like, well, we start fresh. You're a debut now. We treat this like a debut.
Yeah, there's like a long storied history of that too. Well, like when I think of like some of my favorite romance authors, right? Sandra Brown and Tammy Hogue did it. Like a lot of people like sort of like these were like love swept authors to me. And all of a sudden they're writing thrillers. Now it's like, okay, but Tammy, what about
Catherine
the trouble
Coulter,
with JJ?
Yeah.
No, I think that is the question. And it's not like there's a long and sordid history of authors using other pen names.
Yeah. Well, we love you in all forms.
Yes.
All names.
Thank you.
All personalities.
Sarah obviously only writes as Sarah McLean, but remember at Fated Mates Live last in St. Louis, there was a woman who came to like what she thought was going to be a signing for you and had no idea you had a podcast. And like Fated Mates Live, Jayne, is a production. There were 250 people in the audience.
It's goofy. We say lots of inappropriate things that have nothing to do with my book.
And so she came through the line and you told me about it later. And I was like, okay, that woman stumbled into literally like Alice falling down into like, she's like, now I'm in Wonderland or hell, but she stuck it out. So I assumed she had a good time. But that was like one of my favorites. She just thought she was coming to a Sarah McLean signing and instead came to Fated Mates Live.
That's funny. That's great.
Getting the full McLean experience. So Jayne, tell us about the shop on Hidden Lane.
The shop on Hidden Lane is just out now, January 26th, New Year. And it's got a dog. I just want to get that up front because
but the dog lives.
A very charming, like a romance dog, basically, right?
A romance dog.
Romance dog. Like, he practically can talk to you.
Jen is not a dog person, but she liked this dog.
I do like a romance dog. Bruce, right? Wasn't it Bruce?
Bruce is the name of the dog, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to get that out there because that's the new market I'm going for with this, the dog people market.
Dog readers.
Well, and romance dog is
not dogs, dog people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's not a romance of dogs.
Yeah. I like that we haven't mentioned the characters yet, but like the other thing about a good romance dog like Bruce is you can tell that half the time he's like, these two idiots, why can't they get it together?
Oh, I love it when a dog like gets involved.
Yeah, like animals are psychic. We all know that, and this particular dog has got a psychic vibe because he's descended from one of the animals that was affected when the government's big experiment went awry back in the 20th century and blanketed an entire town with a mysterious fog, and everybody woke up with psychic talents. And I thought, well, if the people woke up with psychic talents, maybe the animals did too. So this is
fun.
Yeah. But the story itself is, for me, one of my story has always been romantic suspense. And I've written that in every genre, regardless of what name I'm writing under. If you pick up one of my books, you're probably going to get a murder and certainly a mystery. I don't know how to plot any other way.
Yeah. What else are these idiots going to do while they fall in love?
Something useful. Solve the crime. But along the way, it has occurred to me that the thing about romantic suspense is that it usually, and in my case always, pairs two people together who are going to have to make that relationship work on a very fundamental level in order to survive. The stakes are high because there's a killer somewhere in the background, and they're going to have to figure out who to trust and fast. And my assumption as a writer, never having been there, but my assumption as a writer is that under the force of survival, you're going to learn a lot about a person in a hurry. So the things that might take months to figure out about another person in terms of, can I trust them, sense of honor, their integrity, who are they really working for, that kind of thing. Those are all going to get crammed into a shorter time span, which is lucky for me because most of my stories take place in about a week.
Same. In case anybody wondered where Sarah McLean learned her timing, it's Jayne Ann Krentz and Amanda Quick, everyone.
I mean, why have them dilly-dally?
I know. They're either for each other or not.
Yeah. Don't mess around. Figure it out fast. But it occurs to me that is a form of the old-fashioned shotgun wedding, which has become difficult to do because we're supposed to have more agency than that now. But in reality, I'm sure it still happens.
Yeah. So before we talk about shotgun weddings, though, I want to pause and talk a little bit more about the shop on Hen Lane. Like Jayne's like, okay, I did my job and talked about the book. No, ma'am. In fact, you have not. One of the things that was really interesting to me, too, about the book and this series, which I have read most of because I think the Fog Lake series, and I really enjoy sort of a evil like government or corporate entity versus like the little guys. And it is clear that you do as well. Yeah. Rich people are often the villains, and their villainy is often very simple, right? It's just the greed. I just want more.
Yeah.
And so you have like a blueprint that I know you're really interested in like psychic abilities and like sort of, kind of like how do people deal with like the changes they're experiencing. But often the bad guy is is static in that sense. It's just, again, like it's greed. I want more. Why is that such a core part of like your story, or like the opposite maybe in some way? Is greed the opposite of like sort of the expansiveness of like having a psychic ability to you?
Greed is part of it, but I think the ultimate human temptation is power.
Yeah.
And the ability to have some kind of psychic added power to your own set of powers would be pretty hard to turn down, regardless of whether you're a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, there's other reasons I do the psychic thing, because you don't have to study police procedurals and forensics and DNA and all that stuff, because you're never going to solve the crime that way, because it was a crime that is somehow related to the psychic community, and there's no tests or measurements or way to measure murder by psychic means.
Right. Like everything can just be like fun and invented. Yeah.
It's like Stranger Things. It seems appropriate to be talking about this month.
Well, it also takes me back to the classic amateur sleuth.
Yes.
Where the Sherlock Holmes icon, which is basically about solving the crime through observation, awareness, and intuition. This is probably a good time for me to point out that in our business, as we know, paranormal has come to mean supernatural.
Yes.
Vampires.
Yeah.
Witches, werewolves, that kind of thing. I don't do that kind of paranormal. So if there's anybody out there thinking, oh, she writes paranormal romance, you're not going to find that kind of story. But the psychic thing to me is like one step beyond intuition. And we've all got intuition, or think we do. And where's the line between intuition and psychic perception? And that's that woo-woo factor that I love to play with. And it works well in developing a relationship because there's other ways of knowing.
It's a nice pairing with romance where, right, they're falling in love in a week. Like, what are you going to trust? And when you have very human pain, right? Like both Luke and Sophie have like, ex-lovers who have, kind of done them wrong, or people who have hurt them. Like we all have that. And so, that doesn't having psychic abilities does not prevent you from being human and experiencing those types of, kind of problems. And then how do you trust someone new? Like, is your intuition enough? And so I think it's also like a great metaphor just for like how we fall in love. And so, I do find that it's like a really fun, and then there's like all the stuff that I imagine every time I read one of your books. I think she had a great time thinking of this. She had a great fucking time thinking like, what's this dummy going to be able to do? And I do think that must be, I find myself wondering, like, do you like see something cool out there and think, oh, what if this was blown out to 1,000? What psychic ability would be like? Or do you keep like a master list? What are you doing?
Well, I look at ordinary things, because if you want an example of something that would be easy for us to attribute to psychic ability, look at music. There's a guy playing a guitar down there on the stage, rows and rows and rows away. He's not touching you with any physical element at all. And he can make you cry. He can make you laugh. He can make you want to dance. He can make you sing along. What is that?
Yeah.
What kind of power is that? Where's the line between that and psychic energy? I don't know. I mean, I think it's easier to write off power in ways that once we're able to measure it, once you can have he's putting out sound waves. Okay. But there was a time nobody knew about sound waves,
Right. Right.
They didn't, but they didn't question the power of music.
Yeah.
They used it. And I think if there is a psychic vibe out there, we just haven't discovered it yet. And we stumble over it probably and don't recognize it. Like
yeah,
music.
I think that is true. I do think that's true too.
So that's how I get away with that kind of
Yeah,
plotting.
yeah. Okay, I have one last question. This one, maybe this is silly, but okay, we've talked about your lifetime achievements award. Jane, do you have any idea how many books you've actually written? Like, do you no idea? Okay. Here's why. The characters are Luke and Sophie. And I found myself, I've always thought in my brain that okay, Sarah has written, certain names have been crossed off the list. But I was like, there's no way that Jane has not written other people named Luke and or Sophie. You know what I mean? At some point you recycle through. You're like, oh, I guess I got to go back to fucking Luke here. I don't know. You know?
When in doubt, go back to the
the basics,
the foundations. Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for a new name, but frankly, but I prefer the older names because they have a lot of weight,
staying power. Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
The modern names don't feel like they've acquired that weight yet.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Lexi Davis, author of Pretty Vicious, a Southern Gothic dark academia romance.
Jen, Laurel just wants to survive college. She's got a dad who needs a lot of help. She's trying to fly under the radar. She takes a job delivering pizzas, which is supposed to be a very safe and natural side hustle for a college student, until the night she is sent to deliver a pizza to one of the most secretive and elite fraternities on campus, and she witnesses a frickin' murder. So now she is a prisoner of the order inside there, a blood-bound society that controls everything from politics to police. They rule with ritual, obedience, and violence, and there is no one in the order more powerful than Carson Ashford, heir to the powerful Ashford legacy. He is cold, he is commanding, he is infuriatingly magnetic, and under the rules of the order, he has bonded to Laurel and marked her as his body, mind, and soul. But Laurel is not here to be claimed, not without a fight. So to save her father and her future, she has to navigate a twisted realm of initiation rites, brutal secrets, and a bond that just might destroy both her and Carson.
As long as he is destroyed too, fine. In this dark academia, enemies to lovers, secret society romance, we're going to get a feisty female main character who is, yes, blackmailed and taught to fight by this morally gray man. But you know what? I think she's going to hold her own. I believe in her. So if you would like to check out Pretty Vicious, it is available right now in print and and with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. You can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Lexi Davis for sponsoring this week's episode.
You started and I think we will get further down the rabbit hole on contemporary versus historical or how certain things really just lend themselves to certain time periods. But it is true that there is a sort of a timelessness about certain names that then, and it does actually sort of remove the book from contemporary in an interesting way, right? Like if these characters have been named like Caden and Brianna, you'd be like, well, this is definitely a contemporary.
Well, I mean, like Jennifer, I'm sorry. She's a 50-year-old white lady. I'm sorry. My name is just really not available right now for 25 more years when it becomes cool again.
Yeah, when people name their kids after their grandmothers.
Yes. But until then, right? And so I do, I think, right?
I get it. Signed Sarah from the 70s. I get it.
I think Jennifer's turning into a classic name. It has been for a while now. And other names. And Sarah has always been a classic name. Yeah. So,
I mean, the Bible helps.
Yeah.
But I want to get into something that you said initially about your plotting, right? That yes, obviously there's a timeline. You pull a timeline very tight. There's a ticking clock kind of always in a Jayne and Krentz Amanda Quick book. Somebody's always on your tail, or, someone's about to die, or we better find that, cave quick, and also maybe bang in it. But you know,
Only if there's time.
There's-
If you're between
romance time makes time.
words to live by, Clara, words to live by. Yeah.
So, okay. So, but I would say one of the things that's really interesting is you sort of paint this as you have two people, they have to instantly, really because of threat, they have to learn to know each other very quickly. And so often your books, we talk so much about conflict here on the podcast and how right now, like, it feels like conflict is a really difficult thing to find in contemporary romance because the books are, I think the time period that we're in is sort of calling forth a lot of really soft books. And the softness of a plot does not lead to you and me against the world, which is what you always write, right? And so I think one of the interesting things, and you sparked this so everybody, Jayne is not here to talk about psychic abilities in romance novels. We said, would Jayne like to come on to Fated Mates and talk about one of her favorite tropes? And the email that I got back delighted me and Jen.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
said, can we talk about shotgun weddings and arranged, and forced marriages?
I'm pretty sure I'd slam. Yes.
Jen and I were like, and miraculously, we've never done an episode on forced marriages.
Really?
We've done Marriage of Convenience.
We've done Waking Up Married in Vegas.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of that, but
we've done a lot of marriage books, but this is a particular trope. And I think you've really nailed it, that it lives even when it's not romantic suspense in the romantic suspense on the romantic suspense branch of the tree, because it does end up with these two people against the world or whatever that world may be. So can we talk a little bit, first of all, about the difference between Marriage of Convenience and sort of a softer combination of people? And because there is a lot of that right now in contemporary and in historical. I mean, there's a lot of fake relationship, two people pretending, two people who are making a deal where their relationship is beneficial to both of them. The illusion of their relationship is beneficial to both of them. And I think fake relationship in contemporary is a direct sort of descendant of arranged marriage.
Yes.
Marriage of Convenience, rather. And so can we talk about where forced marriage, right, shotgun weddings, they live in a different space. And so what are they doing?
It's forcing two people to learn to commit to each other because they can't risk committing to anybody else. They don't have a choice in that sense, but they do have the choice of making the commitment. If and it all comes down to trust, I think. They have to find someone they can trust in order to achieve their own objectives, which is usually some form of agency. The reason for women agreeing to arranged marriages in the first place wasn't so much that they had a choice they didn't have a choice in the marriage so much, but they did know that once they got married, they were going to have some agency because a married woman had more power than an unmarried woman.
Mm-hmm.
Even if she derived it through her husband's power, it gave her some agency that she wasn't going to have otherwise. So there was a reason for agreeing to a business marriage, essentially, because the two fathers had a business they wanted to combine, and they wanted, the couple.
And this is a really classic Harlequin Presents from the early days.
But the earliest version of that, where the real power and energy comes from, is the marriage of revenge.
Oh
yes.
Now you're speaking Sarah's love
Singing
language.
my song.
That's where real conflict, and that's where the real battle of the sexes actually take place, I think. And that comes to us from the Chic, going way back.
Yeah.
And it has never gone away. Harlequin Presents is still doing versions of the marriage for revenge. And that I think is the fundamental story of the forced marriage. That and the compromised.
Yeah, right.
The compromised bride has to be her reputation has to be salvaged. And so, but this is the interesting part, because he marries her out of a sense of duty and honor. And that makes him a good guy.
Yeah.
Because you can build on duty and honor.
And not even always duty and honor to her. Sometimes it's duty and honor to his family, to society, to
his title,
the title, and she's sort of collateral damage. But we can, as readers, like hang our hat on that. Like, he will save the basket of puppies, right? Like,
yes, because he's fundamentally a hero,
right?
Yeah,
and that's what this is all about.
Only
is
he could learn to love.
You say that, but like, I would read that book every day and twice on Sunday.
1,000%.
Well, and it's the foundation story, really, of the historical. Sarah and I have both been around long enough to know that one. And you've seen it, Jennifer.
Well, every Julie Garwood. I liked what you said though about like her, like the thing that in Julie Garwood, right, is like this woman has nothing, right? She's like the youngest daughter. She's being married off, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then she gets to Scotland and she's Alec Kincaid's wife. And all of a sudden she's power. I have power, but I'm going to, of course, use it for good and like save this boy from drowning in a stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had not thought about that angle. I think that's as always brilliant.
Yeah. Getting married was a way of getting agency. And I'm sure in the old days, there were a lot of marriages in which she was happy to be a widow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those two are always so great, right? Like the forced marriage that ends with like her a virgin widow, like he died in bed before, collapsed at the foot of the marriage bed on the eve of their wedding.
Well, I mean, he's a 75-year-old man looking at a nubile young 17-year-old. What else was going to happen?
Oh, yeah. A Jude Devereaux special.
And Christina Dodd is writing an interesting series right now, which is very modern in its tone, but it features the daughter of Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, nice.
It turns out they did not die in the vault, and living happily with 7 or 8 kids, the oldest of which is Rosie, and Rosie is now being forced to marry the Prince of Verona because he's compromised. She's been compromised by the Prince of Verona. So she's getting a lot of mileage. She's got a whole series now based on these two characters, and they solve crimes. It's a historical mystery series.
Fun.
But it's really delightful, but it's a straight up arranged marriage. She's actually in love with somebody else. There's somebody else in the beginning, but she goes through it for the sake of the family.
Yeah.
And he goes through it for the sake of the honor because he's the prince and he has to do the right thing because he's the Prince of Verona. So, fundamentally, they're good guys, on both sides. And I think what happens in this kind of story is first the level of trust has to be achieved. And then, and this is the key, I think, that people often overlook in a real romance story. There's a point at which it's way beyond sexual attraction. It's way beyond even intellectual attraction on top of that. There's a point where the two people simply decide to commit. They make a promise and they're going to keep it. And that changes everything. That ability to make the commitment and build the marriage instead of fighting it is the turning point in a romance novel. And it has to come from both sides. And in real life, it's the hardest thing to find. And in the romance novel, it makes for a great, tranquil story. Yeah.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Periwink Press, publishers of Lee Taylor's A Satchel of Richards.
Does that mean what I think it means?
It does, Sarah.
Okay, novelist Bridget Stanton's life needs a massive rewrite. She has a mortgage on her house. She has a gigantic dog who eats her out of house and home, and she knows she will never be able to quit her day job. Unfortunately, her day job quits her. She is suspended for teaching A Wrinkle in Time, and she decides she is going to try for a book advance. So she throws herself at the mercy of her brand new, charming agent who reluctantly inherited her. And he his advice is skip the lit fic and write steamy romance instead. And the problem is, has he really met Bridget? Because Bridget is not a passionate sex person. She doesn't know anything about that. And he proposes a solution. Why don't you do a little bit of research? Maybe head out there and find yourself a satchel of Richards. Enter Josh, a wildly successful romance cover model with Hollywood screenwriting dreams. Josh has spent a lot of time giving vivid descriptions to numerous authors to navigate their spicy scenes, but Bridget needs a little more than sort of oral with an AU descriptions. She's going to need a hands-on approach. And as their research heats up, she offers him credit on the book, something that her publisher is unwilling to give him. And she's got to choose, is she going to take the book deal and betray Josh, or is she going to risk it all for a real-life love story with a real-life co-writer?
Sounds like a fun workplace publishing romance, fake relationship, and like also dealing with a big topic like book banning. So if you would like to check out a satchel of Richards or carry one around in a bag, it is available. The book is available in print and in it is available in Canada at indigo.ca and in the UK and internationally at Amazon. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Periwink Press and Lee Taylor for sponsoring this week's episode. So, due diligence, right? Like one of the things that Sarah and I will do once we have a topic is like sort of like, okay, what have I already read that I can talk about? Maybe books I haven't talked about before. What might I want to read? Right. And then like sort of like, what's the landscape out there? Like, are people still writing this? What does it look like? And I downloaded a couple of contemporaries, and I'm not going to even mention the names because I found myself really unable to read them. And I'm going to talk about why, which is, so it's like, so there's nothing wrong with these books, everybody. So I'm not saying they were bad. I'm saying I feel sick inside, right? So like, I really now, in a time when, women, people in half the states cannot access abortion care, there's threats against birth control, reading a book about 25-year-old, two young people who have a one-night stand, right? Like nobody has any money, right? And then, there's a surprise pregnancy. And I really struggle with, so now they're going to get married and have this baby. And I'm just like, but without really even talking about, I feel like what I'm doing when I read these books, and I'm not saying this is like the intention, I'm saying this is like me internally. I feel like I'm essentially like reading the romance book equivalent of like a trad wife TikTok, right? Because they never, ever actually
interrogate,
do I even want children? Am I in a position to care for them right now? Will we be good co-parents? Do I have the money for it? Is there health insurance? Do I want this baby? And I feel oh, too bad we're in Texas and I guess I have to have the baby unless I'm willing to leave the state. And listen, I know romance is always like sort of glossing over a lot of that, but I feel like at a time when our rights are being compromised in state after state, and of course threaten what they would love to do is make that in the whole country. I find books like this feel like I can't read them. This is a story that makes me sad and uncomfortable and devastated, not like sort of like, yeah, these two crazy kids are going to work it out on, he's a, 23-year-old firefighter. Like that was my parents. You know what I mean? This is not what I want for people. And so I find the classic shotgun wedding, she's pregnant, we have to get married, really hard to read right now.
Okay, so there is the sort of political piece of this, right? Which is like the world around us is the way that it is. And so it is difficult sometimes to read romance that feels like it's complicit in what's happening around us. What's interesting is that I think the books that came that, you look back at the 70s and 80s, right, in contemporary, and like those books were doing this too. Like I talk all the time about this, early Sandra Brown, so early that she was writing as Erin St. Clair. And like it had, this is not a book that I necessarily would like recommend to new readers now, but like it did have this exact sort of structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is that it was stakes then.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think it worked in the 70s and 80s as a referendum on bodily autonomy, on sort of, I think the book was having that conversation sort of subtextually, but also then the structure of those books, they were hard. There were sharp edges to the plot in those books. So we could believe that the push-pull of that character, it is, Roe exists, but like that character's not going to choose abortion as a solution, made sense because there were other plot and structure points at play. And I think this goes back to this sort of like, what are we doing with this? This is by nature a plot, a trope that has to have sharp edges to work, I think. And we're kind of afraid of that now, it feels, as writers, many of us.
There's a Rachel Grant book. Rachel Grant writes romantic suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In her book, Into the Storm, the hero and the heroine have had a one-night stand way back when, and now they're trapped together. They meet again out of accidental circumstances. They're trapped together in a storm in a wild national park. And they're going to have to survive together. But what he doesn't know is that she's carrying his baby from that one night stand. And she makes it very clear that she's prepared. She wants the baby, and she's quite prepared to raise it on her own. She'll take that responsibility. And he has to basically convince her that he wants to be the father in the real sense of that child, and that they can rediscover whatever they found that first night, that there's something there. There was more than just sexual attraction there. So she's not forced to carry the baby to term. She's made the decision to carry the baby, and she is willing to do it without him. And I think that is how that's how the character finds her autonomy and her agency. And he basically has to prove himself that he's going to be a good father. She's not interested in it.
Yeah. Now, I haven't read this book, but I think the other reason this would probably work for me without even knowing it is like Rachel Grant writes characters that are like well into adulthood.
Yes.
Right. I mean, these are not, I think I want to like be really clear, like when these people are in their like mid-20s, I just feel like that's like, right. Like, if you're like well established in your career and that you want to be a parent and this is like something you wanted, then like those characters are like kind of doing different work than, I was 24 or whatever, Well,
that raises a good question, because I'm not as familiar with the rom-com book as I should be. But I think of it as a softer story and more like two friends becoming friendly. And is that trope showing up at all in any of in a?
Oh yeah, pregnant. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. But it's like kind of what I describe, not always, but some of them. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not. That's not the action. That's not the father. The heroine is pregnant by another person, and then there's sort of there's an agreement that her friend will marry her. There are lots of other ways that sort of pregnancy comes into play in rom-coms, but
What about romantasy?
Oh, I don't know.
Because that's a young adult.
Yeah, not that I know.
That's a young adult story. That's a coming of age story.
Even so, this is interesting. Say more about that, because I think you're right, and I don't. And it does feel like romantasy, even in adult romance, has that sort of coming of age feel.
Coming into your power, and but the emotions are very young. So in a sense, they're more like the historicals, where way back in the day.
Well, and that's why like a recent, and this, it does not have a pregnancy plot at all, but like I really liked Silver and Blood by Jessie Mahalik, because this was a woman who actually was closer to 30 when her powers manifested, and so it's not really at all like sort of a young adult book. She has a lot of like kind of wisdom. She knows herself and her body, and then like all of a sudden this magic appears for a reason, and I really liked it. I was kind of like, I'm glad it's not just right. Like,
well, it could be that romantasy is evolving. I mean, we all know that genres don't stay static. They keep evolving and changing, and that could be where romantasy is going, because its audience is getting older.
Yeah.
I also want to talk a little bit more about world. I think this is a good place for us to talk about the world building in these stories. Again, it's sort of, I always come back to conflict. I always come back to stakes. Like, I always come back to wanting, I as a reader need to understand like why these two people are willing to do this, to agree to this thing. And I think that is because I cut my teeth like in the early days on these books, like, you know, A Prisoner of My Desire, which is like absolutely bananas, like, you know, a shotgun wedding wildness, but also like, and I'm on the record, I mean, my Bible for so long was Judith McNaught, right? Who I think does this exact trope probably better than, I mean, A Kingdom of Dreams is a remarkable example of how you can play this with the heroine actually having a tremendous amount of power without knowing that she has power. This is anybody who ever wants to talk about He Falls First, like the hero of that book is just gone for her. He makes a promise that he'll never hurt her family. She forces him into promising this. You said this, Jayne, that there's, you know, you have to know who you can trust. There has to be a promise, right? He promises this knowing that her family is like the worst, full of the worst human beings in the world. But he, you know, understands that she still feels loyal to them. Like, there are all these sort of moving parts. He abducts her from a nunnery, you know, and then forces her to marry him because for, you know, land reasons. And I think part of the reason why, listen, this book is unmatched for me, right? But I also think the reason why I love it is because there is never a moment where we think to ourselves, like, this is not how these people would act. This is certainly not how normal people would act, for sure. But it is not, this is 100% how these people would act when put into this situation. And I think that's a few things. One, I think the medieval of it all gives us as readers, you know, freedom to believe that like these people are, right, you know, somehow less civilized than we are. Not true. But, you know, we could sort of wave away our current issues and say, like, this is uncivilized behavior, but it's a different time, right?
Yeah.
And I think also there's, you know, sort of A+ character work going on here. But interestingly, I do think that when you pull this thread forward, I think all the time about what Sophie Jordan says, which is mafia romance is just medieval romance. Like in suits.
Absolutely.
Guns instead of swords, right?
When I think of the books that really land for me now with this kind of like arranged, forced, dangerous marriage between two people who, you know, and a terrifying dude usually.
Yeah.
It's mafia.
And I love it. Sorry, I'm garbage.
Yeah, they're so fun because you can suspend all disbelief.
Well, what's going for the mafia story is what came out of The Godfather, which is a sense of family first. Everything is about saving the family and building the power of the family, and that loyalty is we all kind of want to feel that, you know, we all want that feeling. If push comes to shove, my brother will have my back. You know, that kind of.
It speaks to what you said, Jayne, that family, that's, you can hang your hat as a reader on a character who's devoted to family, even if he's, you know, ripping fingernails out of people.
Yeah, there's an honor there. There's a kind of honor, and we fundamentally crave that because, I mean, when I think about it, you don't ever learn the lessons of what honor and integrity, what it means to be a hero in the real world, where you learn them from fiction. Fiction is what teaches us what honor is supposed to look like. In fiction, there's a right and the wrong, and the guy has to do the right thing. That's where we get our concept of honor, I think, these days. And the romance novel is very, very much built on male honor.
Do you think that means women don't have honor in these books?
No, I think the men have to prove themselves to the women because the woman is looking for her equal. They see the hero in each other, Jen. That's the magic. They see the hero in each other, and that's when they can make this kind of commitment. That makes it more than business.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Sotto Voce Scents, a Canadian candle company that takes the romance off the page and into your home. Fragrances are inspired by our favorite romance tropes, archetypes, and moments, from grand gestures to second chances, and they ship to the United States.
Okay, so everybody, I don't know if you know this about me, but I really love a candle. So this is our second ad for Sotto Voce. And the first time around, I was like, I'm going to order some of these. And I was delighted by them. And so was Little Romance, by the way, because he also loves a candle. So first of all, they smell terrific. I ordered the jasmine one because I really like things that are jasmine. I like a jasmine candle. And then the other one I ordered was like Cabin Fever. And that's one Little Romance liked best. And he took it from me. Fine.
There are a ton with tobacco flower, which all my heroes smell like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is it. It's like if you've ever been like, what does this smell like in a book? You can get one of these candles. But the other thing about them is they're really beautiful. So they come in a glass holder, and like it's sort of like the candle. I'm not very good at describing things. Is like elevated up above like the bottom of the candle, where the candle rests on like your surface, and then it has like a little curved,
like those.
Yeah,
we like a curve.
We like a curve. We like a curvy bottom.
Like so do all the Heated Rivalry listeners.
Exactly. That's probably
our listenership.
Listen, just consider naming that. It's Canada. It's a candle. I feel like it's all there. So this was I was like a great product. I really love it. I'm excited to order some more.
Excellent. Well, you too can get yourself a curved bottom candle from this terrific Canadian company, Sotto Voce Scents. Like I said, they do deliver to the United States, and Fated Mates listeners will get 10% off their full order with the code FATEDMATES10, this time before Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day scents include friends to lovers, rivals to lovers, and enemies to lovers. And again, you can get 10% off using the code FATEDMATES10 at SottoVoceScents.com. That's SottoVoceScents.com, code FATEDMATES. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy your candles. Thanks to SottoVoceScents.com for sponsoring this week's episode.
So, Sarah, you read one of my, I feel like we should talk about some actual books. Sarah, you read, there's a mafia romance series I like really am garbage for. I love it. And Sarah read one of them and was kind of like, have you read? And I was like, Sarah.
I mean, and you had talked about them on the podcast. I think you've talked about it at least one.
I don't think I've ever, I don't know that I've ever talked about, like, I read them in sort of like a fever dream, kind of one of those things. And so I don't know if I ever actually read.
Isn't that a joy when you find a new... I'm reading the third one in this series right now. So.
Sure, you're just like, let me just do this. Yeah.
I mean, it was for research because we were doing an episode with Jayne and Krentz. Jen, I had to know. So
it was research.
It is
research. Yeah.
I read. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's Niva Altaj is her name, and she has a series. The book that I started with is called Broken Whispers. It is. Thank God for, the internet telling me Broken Whispers, an arranged marriage romance. I was like, well, obviously this is it. And this is a sort of a really, really classic mafia structure, right? She's the daughter of the Italian, capo. He is one of the, chief soldiers. I don't even know the name.
Underboss, Sarah.
Yeah, excuse me, underboss. I just slide. It's just like romance words. I don't know.
Yeah.
He is the underboss of the Russian Bratva, and they have to make an agreement because, chaos has ensued in the book before. And the agreement is the kind of capo of the Italian mafia has this beautiful daughter who, by the way, was a prima ballerina, and the hero has been obsessed with her. Like, has literally been sneaking. This book begins, Jane, with the hero sneaking into the ballet every day. He has nothing else to do. He's like an enforcer for the Russian Bravo. He has no other plans from the hours of 7 to 9 p.m.
Well, yeah, because all the bad stuff happens after midnight. He's like, I just got to kill some time until I go do crimes that starting at 11:30
Well, first
p.m.
he's starting with culture. So he sneaks into the ballet every day to like obsessively watch this woman. And you think this is going to be a stalker romance. And then chapter 1, they're forced to marry. And it's just very lucky for him.
Well, it's kind of, isn't it that he's there, he's like, somebody has to marry, this one. And he's like, I guess I'll do it. It's great. It's terrific.
And it's so funny because it's like listen, all I want from romance in 2026 is just these sort of like outsized plots. Like,
yeah,
I just want it to feel like there are psychic powers in this town because of a magic fog, like there are, or a government fog. I want there to be something happening that feels like there's, these are big, sort of bad, maybe people who are, crawling through the muck to find their honor. And they're just lucky enough to along the way find a person who makes them better for it. And
yes.
I feel like when you get to the core, the deep DNA of romance, that's what it should be in my head. And this book and the ensuing ones, which are each one just like wilder than the next. They're deeply sexy. I mean, these are borderline filthy. And I mean, I'm not mad about it. and every one of these just feels like the stakes are,
sky high.
Yeah, the stakes are everyone's going to die if these two don't marry. And then when they end up in the same house together, they don't know each other. And the added layer of this Broken Whispers book is that she doesn't speak. She was in a terrible accident, caused by her father. And she has a problem with her vocal cords where like if she speaks, it actually hurts. And so she speaks sign language. And of course it turns out that like he's known sign language all along. It's bananas, but also it's exactly what I want. I'm just like eating these books like candy because it feels to me like ultimately the test of the arranged marriage / forced marriage / shotgun wedding is ultimately the money in that book is in the scene where we see them choose each other over family, right? Like there is, I don't even know who said this. I was at some, RWA and I took a class, I went to one of the sessions and somebody said like, there has to be the thing that they are unwilling to sacrifice. And then ultimately they have to be willing to sacrifice that thing for each other, for love. And I think in this situation, that sort of forced marriage, whatever the catalyst is for these two people to get together, has to ultimately be the thing that they are willing to pass over for husband, wife, partner.
Yeah, cleave to each other.
And in Mafia, that works really well.
At the end of a romance novel, there's always the foundation of a new family. It's kind of always, even if there's no baby on the horizon, or even if it's two guys or two women, there's a family that has been formed because of the commitment that these two people are willing to make. But I also see in a lot of, I think rom-com, what we would call rom-com, is the trope of found family. When the core family isn't really meant for you, you just got bored into the wrong one. But you find your people, you find the family, and that found family thing I think is coming, is another version of that ending, that establishing a community. But it kind of softens the romance. because it's not that now they've got people around them, and so they're no longer on their own against the world. But maybe that's the ending. That's the way it's supposed to end.
Yeah, I have like an interesting one that I think does that in a way I wasn't really necessarily expecting. So it's a historical, which again, I think like shotgun weddings and sort of like forced marriages like really live in certain places a lot easier, right? It's a lot easier to get there.
Yeah.
And this one is The Duke's Shotgun Wedding. Thank you for giving it that title, Stacey Reed. And the thing that it's actually like a novella. So it's also like really tight, which I like. It's just maybe like, I was like sort of reading it and I was like, wait, how am I halfway through this book already? It's only like 120 pages. So in this one, what happens is Jocelyn shows up with a pistol or a derringer or whatever, I guess it's the same thing, in the office of Sebastian. He's a duke, right? And she basically says, your brother has compromised me and I need you to force him to marry me because otherwise I'm in trouble, right? And he's like, well, how do I know you're not just in here lying to me, brandishing your weapon? And she kind of throws this like locket at him. And she's like, well, he gave me this as like a sign that he was really committed to me. And we see Sebastian sort of like recognize this thing. And I think like it's a really great example of kind of like, we know why she's in it, but like, why is he in it? So it turns out that she is a lady, but her father's, the estate's falling down. She has no dowry, but there are a bunch of younger siblings. And she's like, if I don't get married to somebody with money, I can't, take care of my siblings. We can't rebuild the house. Like my he's not like a deadbeat, but he's not, he's not like a terrible person, but he's, dumb and gambled or whatever, just can't keep it together. So Sebastian is like, well, I'm really sad to tell you this bad news, but Anthony, the brother, just went to Gretna Green and married somebody else. And she is like, and he sees like her real devastation on her face, like realizes like she really did think she was going to make this work. And then he's like, but I will marry you. Now, meanwhile, you're like, wait, why? Why is he doing this, right? Like, what is his reason for doing this? He's a duke. He can marry anybody. Well, it turns out that so what's happening is like his family of origin is sort of a wreck. Like he has a brother and a younger sister, but he is kind of fairly recently discovered that realized like his mother had essentially had a lover for her entire marriage. And his brother and sister, although he loves them, were the children of this other man. But, they were married. So his father, like sort of by name. And so he feels like I have to have an heir. Not only does Anthony not want this if I die, but like it really, he's not really part of the family. And he's, furious at his mom. And so then like Jocelyn comes in. There's all these really great details, right? He's read part of his mother's like diaries. And so he knows like what's going on. He actually saw her with her lover as a child and like never forgave her. So he's like, but he like rips out the wall between the Duke's and the Duchess's bedroom because he's like, I don't want this coldness between them.
I love rips down a wall, by the way.
Yes.
That is a microtrope that will win me every time.
Right? And so he's like, so Jocelyn's kind of like, this seems like a big room. Where's my room? And he's like, no, there's our room. Right. But then, of course, he's really cold to her because he's a dummy and she has to figure out why, like, right. She has to figure out like what is going on. And so, of course, anybody, I'm not going to give you the particulars, but by the end, she's kind of figured out how to restore his family to him. Right. Something he didn't think was possible and something he didn't think he wanted. And so like, right. She is now the glue that can somehow like put all this back together again, because as an outsider, right, to the family, she can kind of be like, it's your mother. What the fuck is wrong with you? And, and he's like, but no, I've been hating her my entire life. And she's like, oh, you're such a man. But it was, and I really found myself thinking like, this to me is very skilled, like, right. Like you're really, but I think the other thing about a shotgun wedding or like some kind of forced marriage at the beginning is it really literally starts everything with a bang, right? Like everything is moving at such a velocity that you can pack in everything I just told you in such a short period of time and still really believe that, Sebastian and Jocelyn have really fallen in love. Yeah. Right. So yeah, it was great. It's called The Duke's Shotgun Wedding.
Well, maybe it's the ultimate story of romantic suspense.
Yeah. Right.
without the murder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you said from the beginning. It's these two people ultimately have to be together against the outside.
Yeah. And the reason we love the historical so much is because you can pit these conflicts and these themes in larger than life terms. It gets harder in the contemporary to get that go big feeling, and that's why I lean on the psychic element. That's where I'm getting mine from.
Yeah. I mean, we've said this so many times about the challenge with contemporary is that if you make it too realistic, right? If you lean too hard on the world the way that we all live in it, then there is no reason for two people who are enemies, say, to have anything to do with each other. Right.
Oh, because we had a one night stand and you're pregnant, let's get married.
No, that's crazy.
You don't have to do that.
I mean, I also think that I do, for what it's worth, like, I do think that is one of the few scenarios where, like, at least there's something stakesy there, right? Like, I mean, whatever that may be. It doesn't work for me, but I can see why it would work for a lot of people. But I think there's, this is the biggest challenge is, like, once you get into, the dating apps, or like, why didn't you just ghost that guy? Like, he seemed terrible that one time you talked, versus, you think about, here we are, I've been kidnapped from my, warm house in London, and we are careening toward Gretna Green. Like, I'm screwed.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to make this work because I'm trapped in it.
Yeah.
Because part of that has to do with the sense of what constituted a good reputation. And today, for better or for worse, the fact that we can have sexual relationships without risking the reputation of either party, but that gets into murky territory, because we've got a long history of having difficulties with that whole scenario. We're not really free to have free sex. It's not. There's always a price to pay, and somebody always gets hurt. There's no such thing as just walking away, I don't think, for both parties. That kind of there's too much power, psychic power, in sex. And it's not like having a good meal and walking away after a good meal. So it'll always hold a lot of energy for writers.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by the Romantasy Letters, breathtaking romantic fantasy by mail. This is cool.
Yeah, this is actually really fun. I mean, everybody loves getting mail, holding stuff in your hands, and just, like, how often does that happen anymore? So this is just, like, a really fun way to, like, read and, like, experience a story. And in this case, A Treaty of Hearts is a story that is available now in a realm where kingdoms clash and magic bends loyalty. Two sworn enemies must strike a bargain sealed not in ink but blood and desire. Their fragile truce could save their people or shatter their hearts forever. And so what happens is you sign up for this, you get 2 letters in the mail every month, and these also come with, like, keepsakes and other engaging items that take you deeper into the story and the universe. So, for example, stickers, codices, journal entries, coded messages. So you're really just, like, reading the story but also experiencing it in such a fun way.
What a cool thing. Well, if you love the idea of receiving these letters about a mortal king and a fae star weaver bound by a blood treaty, then you are going to love Romantasy Letters. You can get it right now at romantasyletters.com and use the code FATED for 20% off a 1-year subscription to the letters. This could be a great gift for you, a reader, or for the romantasy lover in your life. Again, it's romantasyletters.com. Use the code FATED for 20% off your year subscription. Thanks to romantasyletters.com for sponsoring this week's episode. I mean, the other way that we see it work in contemporaries, and again, in the deft hand of some of the best category writers out there right now, is romance law, right? Which is, our father died and he left a caveat in his will that we must be married within such and such time, and again, but I do think that the trick to making that work is that you have to sort of refract the world through you just have to turn the lens slightly so that we believe that, like, that's not how law works in real life, but it is how law works in romance. And I think
Romance law. I like that.
I feel, Jayne, I say this a lot on the podcast, so I know I'm repeating myself for listeners, but I do feel so strongly that, like, one of the things that we are losing in romance right now is that sort of refraction into, like, the romance universe. Like, we have our world and then there's, like, romance world. And I think this, obviously, like, being kidnapped and forced into marriage is not I don't want that for anyone listening.
I just want to read it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, like, back to my whole, like, sometimes if you're playing it too straight down the middle, then I can't help but live in this world, right?
Sorry, that's where you, Jen, are like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, like, now I actually have real thoughts about, like, I've raised a child. You will never have money again, right? Like, you know what I mean? And I think that is why one of the, I know I, like, just talked about, like, but, like, an example of this is Chelsea Cameron has a book called Marriage of Unconvenience. And it's two women who are, like, basically, like, kind of were best friends when they were kids, right? So Lauren Lowe is one of them, and she, like her life sucks. She needs money, right? She's fucking broke, everybody, right? She, it says, like, it's been a while since I've read this, like, right? Like, her car is broken down and the rent's due, like, right? Like, all the things are just, like, staring her in the face. And then Kara, who is her, like, childhood bestie, comes along. And the thing is like, Lo there's a huge amount of money she can access from her grandmother's will, but she has to be married. And so, Kara comes along and Kara just wants to go to grad school. And Lo is kind of like, oh, wait, I've got a great idea. Let's get married. And I can get Granny's money and I can, like, pay all my bills. And I can, like, as part of the deal, right? I can, like, send you to grad school. Like, it's a lot of money. And of course, like, they're just like, it's just fake marriage. We're friends. And of course, like, they fall in love. It's real love, right? But I do think, like, I feel like one of the ways we see it now that does feel real, although it's not like someone pressuring them. It's, like, the
that's
world.
Marriage of Convenience,
yes,
right?
It's we need health insurance. It's romance law. There's a will, right?
I mean, it does feel a little bit like forced marriage is it feels like it has to be taking direct aim at the patriarchy, capital P, in some way. Like, I was looking for queer romances that do forced marriage, for example, because I always sort of am looking for, like, how do all different, writers think about this. And I do think, like, it works in het romance better because, I don't know. I couldn't find one. So if you're out there and you have one, please let us know, because I would love to read it. I couldn't find one, so I can't say it works better, but I think it is instinctively because these romances are about power, like you said, Jayne, like, this instinctively feels like there has to be sort of a domineering man on page, right? To represent all the ways that we are forced to do things that are, not fun in the world.
Well, the fact that people like Darcy Burke, for example, has a recent book out, Because the Baron Broods. I love the alliteration.
Amazing.
But it's a classic. But it's a classic compromised.
Yeah.
Married for reasons, forced into a marriage because she's been compromised. Those plots are not available to us, and I think in the modern world.
No.
And so I think a lot of what we're looking for is other ways to get at the conflict that we're trying to write about and that still is out there, the conflict between men and women.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And therefore, we're looking for angles that are a forced marriage story. and as you said, it's harder to do it with romance law and everything. The inheritance thing is one of the...
It's a classic.
Yeah, of course.
And that's actually always been true anyway. I mean, that's an old one. But I would like to ask, how much of this do you think comes out of the Gothic, which I consider like the foundational book of romantic suspense, the woman in jeopardy kind of story, and who can she trust? And the confines of the house, which the claustrophobic element, which is what you were talking about, Sarah. You're forced into this situation. You can't just walk away. You're trapped. There's no way to call for the police or anything like that. You know, you have to deal with the conflict within the house.
And you're in there with the monster. It's you and the monster.
Right.
Yes.
Or at least the representation of the monster, right? Like, you didn't pick this man.
Well, I do think that like, Mafia to me has those, I mean, like the medieval, the Gothic, like that sense that, like once you,
And you have to be brave.
Yeah. And once
because we don't want a wet noodle in there with him.
No. And I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of mafia romances where like she's just like a mafia princess and has no choice. And I don't like those as much as the ones who like sort of like fight, like fight it off. And it's funny because you were talking about the Neva Altidge series, but like the fifth one in that series, she is from the her family Chicago mafia, and she like wants to be a nurse. She's like, I don't want this life. She like wants to be a nurse, and she has like an opportunity to do an internship at a hospital in New York, but like the New York mafia guy is basically like, no one from other mafias, that's how it works, will be in New York and he like will literally shop people up in body bags and send it back. I told you no. And he finds her in his territory, but he becomes obsessed with her. And instead of, he's basically like, you have to marry me. But he is like the monster. He is the most monstrous mafia man of all. But of course, all he is like obsessed with her, you know? And I think that and I think there's a way in which like it really like worked for me, but like, yeah, like she finds him to be, you know, sort of like like he was beautiful and attractive. Like they were just flirting. And then once she figured out who he is, she's like, wait, what? I don't want this. I don't want this. I wanted to run away from the house in the nightgown, right? In Chicago. And I did. And then I just get caught by another house.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think women identify with that.
Yeah.
Because sooner or later, it all comes down to the house.
I think that you're hitting on something, though, Jen. The part of the reason why that reminded me of Mafia Virgin by Mila Finelli, who, Jayne, if you don't know this, Mila Finelli is the pen name of Joanna Shupe, who writes Gilded Age romances, and Mila Finelli is her Mafia pen name, her Mafia writing pen name. So a little bit of a Jayne and Krentz, you know, also in your world. And she, Mafia Virgin has this great scenario where, so Emma, it's, you know, late in I don't know, it's number 4 or 5 in the series. Emma is the sister. She has seen her sisters be sort of married off, partnered off as in bargaining, with a bargaining structure between her father and, you know, other, you know, powerful men. And she is like, I want to be a doctor. Like, my dream has always been to get out. I want to go to medical school. Like, I want to do something that is different. And the reason why I'm sort of thinking about this, Jen, obviously, besides the medical piece, is there's something here where the motivation for her to get out is deeply like her plans for her life to save people, to protect people, to do no harm, right?
Yeah.
Runs totally antithetical to the mafia.
Yeah.
And so she is kind of swept up, forced into marriage with Giacomo, right? Who is a kind of, what did you say? Enforcer. I'm going to go with enforcer.
Sure.
And for the Italian
There are
mob.
two kinds of enforcers in romance: hockey and mafia. That just makes sense, everyone.
We might be edging up on heated rivalry is actually mafia. We'll get there.
The NHL is mafia.
Exactly.
Fine.
So, but what's interesting with this one, and I mean, this is where like literally it's like Joanna tapped directly into my id with this book because they are forced to marry and then they are sent. I mean, all mafia is medieval, right? Into a room to like consummate the marriage.
Yeah, come out with
and they
blood on
want
the
to see
sheets.
blood on the sheets, Jayne. And she's like, what? It is 2024. I am not doing this medieval shit. And he's like, fine. So he punches the wall to make his knuckles bleed and then wipes his hand on the sheets and sends them out. And I was like, oh, he's the greatest. I don't care. I don't care that he tortures people for a living. He's amazing. Right?
A+.
But what's interesting about this book is like the why can't they be together right now, which is like my core question mark, right? As I'm writing every scene, why can't they be together right now? They can't be together because their goals, their identities, their passions, like everything they expect and want and believe in are deeply, he is a punisher. He kills people for a living. He tortures people, and she wants to be a doctor. And like, how is this going to work out?
Does it?
Sure, of course.
It's a romance. Yeah, it does. But that's the magic of it, is this sort of, that's what I want. I want this. I think the cornerstone of the arranged marriage, the forced marriage, has to be like these two people cannot function together. And now they are forced to you and me against the world.
Yeah, I think that's it. And we identify with it as readers because on some level that's real life. We just don't see it as in stark terms, but in the books we see it in stark terms. But in real life, you're putting two people together who probably have very little in common, including their sex. They're not even the same sex. If in some cases, at least if you get two women or two men, maybe there's more in common there. But you're asking two beings that are very fundamentally different in so many ways.
Yeah.
To find the compromise that can let them build the family.
Well,
start a family.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that like romance does really well, and it was when you were saying this, it made me think of it, Sarah, is like often the way that like romance shows it, that is, I think, like a reflection of real life. It's just like often at like 7,000 is like, it's like the cultural differences, right? Like, you know, in your regular real life, it's like, you know, whether or not you put marshmallows on the sweet potato casserole at Thanksgiving, and like now you're going 79 rounds over something that like doesn't matter. But like the cultural differences that are like come to bear in these books, right? So there's one I read by Ruby Dixon, it's great. It's called The King's Spinster Bride. And in this book, okay, so like it starts off with the epilogue where she is like a 16-year-old princess and he is an 8-year-old boy, like a king from he's going to be a prince from another country. And she essentially protects him. And even at 8, he's like, don't worry, I'm not going to forget about this. And then we pick up however many years later where he's 24 and she's almost 33. And like we find out she was like, you know, in the epilogue, her father has been killed. So she's the queen now. And she like is like, I'm going to protect this boy. Like, we're not going to kill this innocent child. And that's when he's like, don't worry, I got you. And we find out later that he, in fact, did go to his father, like a couple hours later, essentially invades and is like ready to kill her. And he's like, no, you can't, because she saved me. So she gets sent off, everyone, to the nunnery. Okay.
Love it.
Now, and she's like, all right, everyone's going to forget about me. I'm just going to like live here. You know, it's not my kingdom anymore. And I'm just going to hope that she's basically like, I can either live out my days here, but probably what's going to happen is someone's going to remember here and come to kill me. Well, turns out not Giacomo, that's not his name. I'm like,
That's
that's not his
Miller Finelli.
name. That's Miller Finelli. Matthias comes along, right? He's now 24. She's 33. And he has been told, basically like, people aren't happy, kill her. And he's like, I've got a better idea. Why don't I marry her? And of course, he's like super hot. She's like, I'm too old for you now. And it turns out that like basically the way he's going to prove that he's worthy of her is to make her do like sort of like their wedding ceremonies. Right. And for her, it's like we have to ride through and carry the bands and you have to like throw coins at people to show that you are like worthy of me. And his are a lot more sexy now. Right. But I found myself really thinking like what this really is despite like the like really super over the top nature of it. Right. Like it's just like, here are my cultural customs. Here are yours.
Mhm.
In order for us to happily marry, I have to be willing to do the ones that are important to you and your people, and you have to be willing to do the ones that are important to me. And I found myself thinking, like, even though it was like super crazy, I mean, he and his people are called Cyclops because once you get old enough, you have to blind yourself in a fucking eye to prove what a good soldier you can be. You don't need two eyes to be a good soldier. So when I tell you this is over the top, but at its core, I was like, this is about marriage ceremonies, right? This is about like sort of cultural, like a cultural competency. Like you have to do this and I have to do this. And this is how we prove to everybody that even though you don't have an eye and I've been a spinster in a nunnery, we can make it all work out. And it was great. And it was great, everybody. I had a nice time reading it.
Which only goes to prove, I think, that if you're looking for a genre that pushes the boundaries, you can't beat romance.
Correct. You heard it here first. Jayne and Krentz said it, so it must be true.
I don't see that kind of inventiveness in mystery or even in fantasy. I've always said, that you can experiment in romance that you can't do in other genres and still find an audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Jayne, have you done this trope?
Well, Ravished was a certain version of that. Ravish is the one where her main interest in life is little bones and
fossils.
Fossils.
Yeah. And he's the wounded hero from the past who's been totally misunderstood. And they wind up in the cave together.
I remember.
So they compromised, and he feels he's going to marry her, and she really doesn't care because by now she's old enough that she can live out her life unmarried. But the family pressure is such that they're going to have to.
That is, by the way, my favorite kind of heroine, where the hero is like losing his mind. He's like, "We must marry. What of your reputation?" And she's like, "Dummy, I don't care.
I don't care anymore." Yeah,
yeah, that one is great.
Yeah,
I do love it. It's funny because it's like such a nice twist on the like shotgun wedding where he's like, "Yes, but my honor," and she's like, "Yes, but what? I don't care."
Yeah,
right.
Who cares about your honor?
Where it's like you have to get on board with the fact that like
no one was in that cave with us. It's fine.
Nobody knows. I know.
Yes.
Yeah. So the compromised married, the wedding for reasons of community, that they have to live in that community, and this is one of the requirements. Under these circumstances, you will have to get married if you live in this community. And what are you going to do? Exile yourself? You can't. I mean, there's no place to go really to live alone, and why would you? And but I like I said, I find myself leaning on the emotions of that kind of situation when I write romantic suspense.
Right.
Because these are two people who can't trust anybody else. They're going to have to trust each other to survive.
Right. You and me against the world.
And that's the essence of the shotgun marriage. You're stuck with it.
And
leave us not forget, it is not that old a realism, a reality in America. Right. We invented the term shotgun marriage for a reason. And I remember back in high school, I'm that old, but it's not that long ago, people. If you got pregnant, you got married.
Well, and that's why I was saying, like, that's why I was like, I need it to be in romance reality. I need everything shifted a little, because if it's too, and listen, plenty of people get pregnant and get married and end up in happy marriages. Of course, I'm not saying that cannot exist in the real world, but the truth is, plenty of women in those scenarios are desperately unhappy and are trapped, right? Trapped by, this man has all the money and this man has all the power and all I have is the kids. And, those are, it's very hard for me to read those books as like a happily ever after, because I know, it's just like, if you don't have, like, the power cannot all be in one corner. At the end of a good romance, that power has to be diffuse and shared. And it has to be like, that's a really big part of it. And so, there are certain circumstances under which, like, just like me for my life, find like there's a certain set of scenarios where I'm like, no, is going to be my experience. Not like, oh, right. And I don't know what it says about me that, like, I'm far more willing to be like, oh, look, Mylene is happy in her marriage to the mafia king of New York. Of course she is. Right? Of course she is. Right? Than like regular Katie living in small town Wyoming who got knocked up by the firefighter. Like, Katie, you're in real trouble. Mylene, she's going to be fine. And I know that makes no sense, everybody. I own that. I do. I do.
I love it. I think you've got a plot there.
Katie, you're in real trouble. Katie, you need a bank account of your own.
Yeah, get the heck out of it.
Katie, the Walmart in the next town carries condoms, It's fine.
Well, and actually that is, you just hit on the actual reason why it's very hard to make the unexpected pregnancy flies, because it does infer a lack of responsibility.
And that is tricky for a heroine, right? That is tricky to sell.
It's tricky for a hero to ignore.
Well, that's why, and this is a different episode, but that's why The Secret Baby is basically the only way you can really sell that to a certain segment of romance readers, because if he didn't know and he didn't take responsibility, that is the only way we can forgive it.
Yeah, he didn't know. Yeah, no, it's tricky to make that plot fly today. That's no question about it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I think if you want to, you can do it. It's you.
I will tell you that, the reason condoms started showing up in romance novels, it was not because of responsibility. It was all to do with AIDS. That changed the landscape of the romance novel in a major way.
We had Jayne we had Elda Minger on. I don't know if you remember Elda, but she wrote category romances, and she was writing for Vivian Stevens at Harlequin, and she asked to put a condom on page, and we believe that she is the first person to have done it. And she came on and she did a Trailblazer interview with us that I'll send you a link to, but and we'll put it in show notes, everyone. But that story is a really fascinating one, and it's one that I think you'd be interested in. And you would she said it too. There, AIDS plus just an awareness of pregnancy as a life ender for a lot of girls.
Right. And that, she talked about, like, you couldn't go into and ask for condoms, and the pharmacist would say, like, are you married? Right? Where's your husband? Yeah. And so I think this is, and I think I spent a lot of time in my life thinking like we had gone past that. And I think clearly some of you have not. And you're doing it wrong, everybody. It's fine. I'm talking to the men out there.
Not you, listeners. Yes, we love our listeners.
Of course.
You all know what we're talking about.
No, of course, they know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, it is. I think that is really interesting. In that way, I think these stories will continue to be a part of romance as long as this continues to be a part of, like, our society, right? And that's always what romance is doing and what it does best.
Well, we are almost at the end of our time, but I do want to say that, Jayne, we would love to have you back to talk about revenge, because you said that at the beginning, and then we just left that lying on the table, and it is my favorite. So we should do that sometime. But it is always a joy to have you. You always say something that I end up writing down in a fury, which is this time it was, we don't learn about honor from real life, we learn about it from fiction, which feels woof, especially these days. But thank you. And okay, the new book is called The
Shop on Hidden Lane.
Thank you.
The Shop on Hidden Lane with a dog. There's a dog.
Yes.
The Shop on Hidden Lane with a dog. And
I believe that's the subtitle.
Yes, parentheses with the subtitle. It's the colon. It's what comes after the colon on Amazon.
With dog.
It's out right now wherever people get their books. And what else is coming? I know you're so prolific. What else do you have coming this year, Jayne?
I have another Jayne Castle coming up in May called Enter the Nightmare.
Ooh,
that's good.
That's a good one.
It's good.
Going for the gothic vibe.
Yeah. I love it. I want somebody to bring back like women in nightgowns running away from houses for covers. Can you get that done, Jayne?
Maybe they could be running away from like a corporation.
Go, Jen. Another plot from Jen. We're going to start writing down plot.
She's like running through Midtown away from
away
the
from high rise
headquarters.
We can make that fly, I'm sure.
And where can people learn more, find you, talk to you, enjoy your company online?
I'm on Facebook, JayneAnnKrentz.com for the website, and some IG, Instagram.
Great.
I gave up on TikTok. I took the class, failed.
That's simply not our business.
Listen, that feels not for me either. So yeah, we don't do that. So everybody, you can find links to all of Jayne's social media and Jayne's website and Jayne's books in show notes, as always. Jayne, thank you so much for joining us. This is always
thank you so much. I love these conversations. These are always a lot of fun.
You're leaving with lots of ideas for, new mafia romance from Jayne.
Except I'm good with that, except for the fingernail pulling part.
I know. There's always that one scene in the book where he does in fact torture a person, and I'm always like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But I guess
because in a medieval they had to go out onto the battlefield with their swords, Sarah.
It's true, they did. Anyway, everyone, I'm Sarah McLean. I'm here with my friends Jen Prokop and Jayne Ann Krentz. We are Fated Mates. You can find us every Wednesday at fatedmates.net and wherever you get your podcasts. Also at fatedmates.net, if you hit the show notes button, you'll see a list of all the books that we talked about today and all the books we talk about every week, along with a list of Jayne's books, Jayne's pen names. Maybe we'll get a list of her Lifetime Achievement Awards. We'll throw that in there too. And you can also find us online to tell us more about your favorite forced marriage, arranged marriage books. We are at Fated Mates Pod on Instagram and on Threads, and we are on Blue Sky as fatedmates.net. If you want to spend more time talking about romance novels the way we talk about romance novels today, you can join our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/fatedmates. That gives you access to one extra episode every month, and the Discord. We're about, a couple thousand people are talking about romance novels all the time. It's fast and furious over there and very fun. Thanks, everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other.
That was perfect.